For our midterm project, our presentation topic is impermanence. So when you hear the word impermanence, what do you think? And kind of what we took is kind of like really it's anything temporary, where life, especially in life, nothing really stays forever, nothing stays permanent, everything changes. And that really is what impermanence is about, especially in Buddhism, because really it's everything physical and mental comes into being and then dissolves, and because nothing lasts forever. And taking that further, you can see it in, especially in Tibetan Buddhism, we add in the aspect of death, because that very much is a part of impermanence, especially with life, because impermanence extends to all aspects of life, not just being alive, but also being death. Death is very much inevitable and part of being us as humans, in the cycle of rebirth and samsara. We have to go through these cycles of death and rebirth.
Most of us think the impermanence of life is a fact better left without acknowledgement. We want stability in our lives and in our world. Turbulence is undesirable. Oftentimes, we stick to routine and do things that make us feel safe or comfortable. We refuse to accept that what we know and who we are will change. However, this impermanence is an inevitability. Our consciousness is temporary, and our eventual death is guaranteed. If we recall from our text, consciousness, the guest who lodges in the body, must in time depart. Furthermore, the scripture states that our death is inescapable, that it is impossible to know when we will die, but at the time of death, only the Dharma is important. The notion of impermanence is the foundation for the Buddha's teaching, having been the initial insight that impelled him to leave the palace in search of a path to enlightenment. Impermanence, in the Buddhist view, encompasses the totality of conditioned existence, ranging in scale from the cosmic to the microscopic. At the far end of the spectrum, the Buddha's vision reveals a universe of immense dimensions, evolving and disintegrating in repetitive cycles throughout beginningless time. In the middle of the spectrum, the presence of impermanence comes to manifestation in our inexorable mortality. Our condition of being bound to aging, sickness, and death, of possessing a body that is subject to being worn and rubbed away, to dissolution and disintegration. And at the close end of the spectrum, the Buddhist teaching displays the radical impermanence uncovered only by consistent attention to experience in its living immediacy. The fact that all the elements of our being, both physical and mental, are in constant process, arising and passing away in rapid succession from moment to moment without any persistent underlying substance. In the very act of observation, they are undergoing destruction, vanishing, fading away, and ceasing.
The methods for dealing with death in different parts of the world are very distinct. In the West, bodies are often buried in graveyards. People go back and visit the graves where the bodies are buried. In contrast, common Tibetan funeral practices include sky burials and long-burning pyres for the burning of bodies. A concept related to impermanence is bardo, the intermediate state between death and rebirth, in which one experiences terrifying hallucinations and other phenomena. It is not universally accepted. Some schools accept the existence of the intermediate state, while others reject it. For appropriately trained individuals, the bardo offers a state of great opportunity for liberation, since transcendental insight may arise with the direct experience of reality. For others, it can become a place of danger, as the karmically created hallucinations can impel one into a less than desirable rebirth. Poa is the practice of conscious dying. It involves ejecting the consciousness from the body and is often known as a quick way to achieve enlightenment. It is said that those who know Poa don't even need to meditate anymore. The image on the left depicts a Tibetan sky burial ceremony. The body is left to decay for the scavengers to consume. It is a common way for commoners to dispose of the dead in Tibet. The image on the right shows a person who practices Poa. The blade of grass is used to demonstrate a successful practice of Poa. The blade is pushed into a small hole in the skull, which is where the consciousness leaves the body.
So thinking back about impermanence and death, we kind of ask ourselves these questions. If everything dies and changes, then what is really true? Is there something behind appearances? does religion exist solely to answer the question of what happens after death? Or possibly to comfort the conscious beings about the mystery that is death? And to some extent, Tibetan Buddhism can answer these questions. We know that death and rebirth are guaranteed, but the nature of the next life is unknown. Kind of that, going back and thinking about impermanence, you really have to take into account kind of the absolute value of everything and anything, and see it for its ephemeral nature. See for it that everything goes by kind of quickly and suddenly. If you really think about it at a personal level, you can really relate it to, say, you see the season changing. You always won't have, say, a one season of winter like forever, or a season of summer forever. Everything comes and goes, everything changes. Thinking about impermanence in terms of, I guess, like living and dying, you could think of it as a train analogy, where you're waiting on a platform and becoming anxious for a train. This is a train that you must get on and take, but you really aren't prepared to go and leave. And that's really how you kind of think of death. You really don't think about death, but you know it's going to happen, and you're not really prepared for it, which really kind of makes you reconsider how you kind of live your life and reconsider all the small things. Because learning to live with the immediacy of death kind of helps us sort out the priorities and helps us realize what's truly important in life. It's really more about understanding the priorities of all your small actions and understanding what things you can do, what things you should do, actions you take, actions you don't take. Because in the grand sum of things, everything you do, you really don't have that much time to waste. Because you never know, death can creep up on you on the very next day, very next hour, very next minute, and that's something that you really can't account for. And if you take that into account of like life, where you say like you put off homework, maybe you never know, maybe like something happens, you put off helping out somebody, you put off helping out friends, or you say you don't do anything. Kind of creates laziness atmosphere, which really, I guess, lessens the value here. But it's really important to understand that everything is important. You should take into account that life, especially emotions, mental, even physical things, can't last forever. Because if you have these things that are meant to be temporary, meant to be let go, making them permanent really kind of sets you up for great disappointment. It's almost like you're creating your own suffering, seeing that you want to hope for things that don't change, but inevitably they will change.
In conclusion, the seemingly stable world around us is always changing. It may be at a level that we are unaware of on a day-to-day basis, but nothing is permanent. When we fully comprehend this truth, we are free to live in the moment and realize the limitless possibility that this change presents. We are no longer bound to the events of the past, and we can appreciate experiences without clinging to them. Our situation is and always will be changing. Anything is attainable, even enlightenment and liberation.
These resources are good resources to continue the thought about impermanence. I hope you enjoyed.